live stream on your channel Pure English. In today's live lesson, we will be talking about one of the most crucial topics in the English language, and that's modal verbs. Modal verbs are a family of verbs which are used for various purposes. In today's lesson, we will not be covering all the family or all the modal verbs, but we will be having some sort of a playlist, a series of videos in which we shall be covering the different types of modal verbs, and we will be talking about the use of each one of them. In today's lesson, we will be tackling 5 modal verbs. These are may and might, can and could, in addition to should. So in today's live lesson, we will be talking about 5 modal verbs, how to use them correctly, and how to employ them in your sentences in the correct way. And I will begin with may and might. But before I talk about may and might specifically, there is a golden rule or a rule of thumb that you need to know when it comes to using modal verbs, which is that all modal verbs must be followed by the bare infinitive or the base form of the verb. What does that mean? It means that after any modal verb, you will have another verb in the sentence, and we call the second verb, which comes after the modal verb, we call it the main verb of the sentence. This main verb, which comes after the modals, must be in the infinitive, and this infinitive must be the bare infinitive, which is the infinitive without to. So you say, for example, he might go to New York. He might go to New York. Might is a modal verb, and as you can see, the main verb which comes after it in the sentence is go. You cannot say he might to go. That's wrong, because after might, which is one of the modal verbs, you have to use the bare infinitive or the base form of the verb, which is the infinitive without to. So you cannot say he might to go to New York. That's incorrect. You cannot say he might goes to New York. That's also wrong, because goes is not the infinitive of the verb go. We have the suffix es added to it. You cannot say, for instance, he might going to New York, because going is the ing form of the verb, and that's not the infinitive. And when it comes to modal verbs, you must follow them with the bare infinitive or the base form of the verb. You cannot say even he might went to New York or he might gone to New York, because went is not the infinitive, that's the past simple or the past tense of go, and gone is the past participle, it's not the infinitive either. So the rule of thumb or the golden rule that you must know, and this rule has no exceptions, whenever you are using a modal verb in the sentence, the verb that follows the modal verb, which is the main verb of the sentence, must be in the bare infinitive or the base form. Okay, so as I said a couple of minutes ago, I will be beginning today's lesson with talking about may and might. Well, we use may and might to talk about something that we call possibility in English. So, if you say he might go to New York, this means that it's possible that he will go to New York. It's probable. It's not certain. It's not sure. So may and might hold a factor or a component of uncertainty. if you're not positive or if you're not sure that something will happen, you express this idea of possibility or probability or uncertainty using may and might. Another example, you might say, or you can say, for instance, it might rain. It might rain, which means that it's possible that it will rain. I'm not sure that it will. It might rain, but I'm not certain. The fact of the matter is that may and might are synonyms, which means that might can be used instead of may, and may can be used instead of might. The two can be used interchangeably for the same purpose, which is expressing the idea of uncertainty, that you are not sure, not positive, that something will happen. Let me give you some further examples on may and might. I may go to the cinema tonight. I may go to the cinema tonight. This means that it is possible, it is probable that I will go to the cinema tonight, but I'm not sure. Buy a lottery ticket. You might be lucky. I'm not sure that you're lucky, but you may or you might be lucky. So I advise you, or I suggest that you buy a lottery ticket because you might be lucky or you may be lucky. As you can see, may and might are used to express the idea of possibility or probability. And if you negate the sentence, which means that you put the word not into the sentence, so instead of saying might, you say might not or mightn't. Mightn't is the contracted form, the contraction or the short form. You can say mightn't. Instead of saying may, you can say may not. By the way, there is no contracted form in English for may not. There is no such a word in English as mayn't. Mayn't is a word that doesn't exist in English. So you can say mightn't as a short form or as a contracted form, but you cannot say mayn't. You must use it in the full form by saying may not. But in case of might, you can say might not, which is the full form, or you can say mightn't. Examples, you can say I might not go to work tomorrow. I might not or I mightn't go to work tomorrow, which means it's possible that I will not go. It is probable that I won't go to work tomorrow. Sue may not come to the party. Sue may not come to the party, which means that it is probable or possible that Sue won't come. She's not sure if she is going to come to the party or go to the party or not. So may and might can be used as synonyms. You can use them interchangeably to express the idea of probability or possibility, to say that you are not sure or not certain that something is going to happen. One more point which I like to highlight here about may and not might. So the point I'm going to say right now is valid for may, not might. You can use may in questions with the pronoun I. So may can be used in a question with the pronoun I to make a polite request. So you say, for example, may I ask a question? It's the same as using can or could. Could I ask a question? Can I ask a question? But it's worth mentioning here that using may in a question like that indicates the idea of politeness or decency. It's more decent than using can and could. I'm not saying that can and could are not polite, but may is more formal and more polite. May I sit here? That's a polite request. You're asking to sit here. So you say, may I sit here? And the other person, if they are giving you the permission, they say, yes, you may. So it's like you are taking permission or you're asking for permission, and the other person grants you that permission by using may as well in the answer. So you say, may I do that thing? May I ask a question? Yes, you may. May I sit here? Yes, you may. So the point I'm highlighting here is that may and not might, can be used in questions with the pronoun I. Only with the pronoun I, we can use may I plus infinitive in a question in order to make a polite request or to seek permission, and the other person might or mightn't grant you the permission by saying yes, you may, or no, you may not. This is the first section of today's live lesson, which is covering two modals, and these are may and might. The next section in today's live lesson will be about can and could. And in the beginning, I might tell you, or I need to tell you, that could is the past of can. So when you talk about a past scenario or a past event or a past situation, you use could, whereas can is used to talk about the present or the future. These two modal verbs, I'm talking here about can and could, are used for expressing ability. Well, let me tell you something. Can and could have several uses in English, but in today's video, and just for the scope of this live lesson, we are tackling one usage for these two modal verbs, and that's talking about ability. So when you say, she can play the piano, she can play the piano, this means that she has the ability to play the piano. She is able to play the piano. And as you can see, when we say she can play the piano, the verb after can, which is the main verb, play, must be used in the infinitive, because that's the golden rule that we have agreed upon. This is the rule of thumb when it comes to modal verbs, that the verb after the modal must be in the infinitive. You cannot say she can plays. You cannot say she can playing. You cannot say she can played, because all of these, plays, playing, and played, all of these are not the infinitives of the verb play. You must say she can play the piano. In the negative, you say she can't or she cannot. So cannot is the full form without short forms or without contraction, whereas can't is the contracted form or the short form. By the way, when you write cannot in the full form, you write it as a single word. So cannot is one word, not two words. There are no spaces in it. So cannot is spelled C-A-N-N-O-T as a single word with no spaces between can and not. That's the full form in the negative, cannot. But in the contracted form or the short form, you say can't, or in American English, they pronounce it can't. So in British English, they pronounce it can't, but in American English, they pronounce it can't. So let me give you some more example. Susan can speak Italian. Susan can speak Italian, which means that Susan has the ability to speak Italian. I can swim in different ways. I can swim in different ways, which means that I have the ability of swimming in different styles or in different fashions. So using can in all these examples indicates the idea of ability. And using can't or cannot indicates the concept or the notion of inability. Excuse me. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, if you want to indicate the past or to talk about ability in the past, you use could, and in the negative, it's couldn't or could not. Could not are two words, not like cannot. So cannot is one word, no spaces, cannot, one word, whereas could not are two words with a space between could and not. Whereas the contracted form is couldn't, just like the contracted form in the negative of can is can't in British English or can't in American English. So for example, you can say, when I was young, I could run very fast. When I was young, I could run very fast. Because you're talking in the past, you must use could. But be careful that could is also a modal verb, so you have to follow it with the infinitive of the main verb. You cannot say, when I was young, I could ran. It doesn't mean, because you're talking about the past, it doesn't mean that you can use the past form of the main verb, which is ran. Why? Because it has a modal verb before it. It's preceded by a modal verb. In this example, it's could. So you must use the infinitive, which is run. So when I was young, I could run very fast. Another example, I was tired last night, but I couldn't sleep. Last night, that's also a past event. I couldn't sleep last night, something from the past. So couldn't is the negative of could. You can write it as a single word, couldn't, or as two words, could not. Also, can and could are used in requests, as we said earlier, but may is considered to be politer or more decent than are. So you can say, for example, can you open the door, please? Can you open the door, please? Or you can use could. You can say, could you open the door, please? So these two expressions are the same. You can say, can you open the door, please? Or could you open the door, please? You can say, can you wait a moment, please? Or you can say, could you wait a moment, please? You can also use can and could with pronoun I. You can say, can I borrow your umbrella? Or could I borrow your umbrella? So you can use both modals or both modal verbs, can and could, to make requests which are still polite, but may is even politer than they are. Right, so far we have covered 4 modal verbs, talked about their main usages. We talked about may and might, can and could. And now we're going to move on to the last modal verb in today's live lesson or live stream, and that's the modal verb should. Remember, all modals or modal verbs must be followed by the bare infinitive or the base form of the verb. Never forget that rule. Should is no exception. Should is another modal verb, so the verb that comes after it must be in the infinitive. And when we use should, it means that you are giving advice to someone. You're telling them it's advisable to do that thing. It's the right thing to do. So should is used for the purpose of advice. When you say to somebody, you should do something, this means it's the right thing to do it. And when you tell them you shouldn't do something, then you advise them against doing that thing, so it's the right thing not to do that thing, okay? Shouldn't is just like couldn't when it comes to negation or negative forms. In the contracted form, it's one word, shouldn't, and in the full form, it's 2 words, should not, just like the same case of could not. Let me give you a couple of examples highlighting the usage of should. Tom doesn't study enough. He should study harder. It's the right thing. It's the good thing. It's the advisable thing to do for Tom is to study harder. Another example, it's a good film. You should go and see it. So I'm giving you a piece of advice here. I'm telling you it's preferable, it's advisable that you go and see that film because I saw it and I liked it. When you play tennis, you should watch the ball. I advise you as a tennis player, in order to excel in that game and to master it, to watch the ball carefully and keep your eyes on the ball. So when you play tennis, you should watch the ball carefully or all the time. These are some examples of using should for advice. Let's have a couple of examples on using shouldn't, which is another piece of advice, but not to do something. It's a piece of advice against doing something. So, you shouldn't go to bed so late. I'm advising you here not to do something rather than doing it. So I tell you, you shouldn't go to bed so late or that late. Also, another example, you might say, you shouldn't watch TV that much. You shouldn't watch TV that much. So I advise you against watching TV much. There is another verb called a semi-modal, called ought to. Ought to is a synonym to should. Ought to is spelled O-U-G-H-T and then to, T-O. So ought to, we call it a semi-modal, not precisely a modal, it's a semi-modal, and it's synonymous to should. You can use ought to advise somebody to do something, and you can use oughtn't to advise somebody against doing something, as if you're telling them that they shouldn't do that thing. For example, I can say the same examples we gave before. It's a good film. You ought to go and see the film, but I'm using ought to rather than should because both of them are synonymous to each other, are synonyms. I think Lisa ought to buy new clothes. So this is a piece of advice for Lisa, or I believe that's the right thing or the correct thing for Lisa to do. I think Lisa ought to buy, which means I think Lisa should buy some new clothes. And the last point I'd like to highlight here is about another modal verb which we will be talking about at length or in detail in our next live stream, and that's must. There is a difference between must and should. When I tell you, you should do something, this is only advice. I encourage you to do it. I urge you to do it, but I'm not forcing you. You're not obliged to do it. I cannot force you. But when I say you must do something, this means that you are obliged to do it or that you are forced to do it. So be careful about the difference between these two modals, must and should. Should bears the meaning of advice, of encouragement, but must bears the idea or the notion of obligation, which means that this thing is compulsory or mandatory that you do. You have no choice or you have no options about it. You are obliged to do it. So that's the main distinction between must and should, is that should is used to encourage somebody to do something or to give them a piece of advice, to tell them it's the right thing to do, whereas must, on the other hand, bears the idea of obligation, which forces the other person or obliges them to do it, meaning that this action is compulsory or mandatory for them to do. Right, so in today's live stream, we have covered 6 modal verbs. May and might, which are synonyms to each other, should and ought to, which are also synonyms to each other, and we talked about can and its past form, could, which are used to talk about ability, the idea of ability or inability to do something. This is a series of videos that we will be covering over the upcoming live streams in order to tackle and scrutinize and dissect all the family of modal verbs. Today, we talked about the modals of probability or possibility. Those are may and might. We talked about the modals of ability. Those are can and could. And we talked about the modals of advice. And those are should and ought to. In our next live stream, which is going to be tomorrow, we will be talking about modals of necessity or obligation. Modals and semi-modals like must, have to, have got to, has to, and has got to. So stay tuned for the upcoming live streams and the upcoming recorded videos as well. It's always a pleasure to have you watching these videos. And at the end of today's live stream, I call on you, if the content appeals to you, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down there in the comment box. I'll be more than glad to respond to your comments, and also share the videos to any other person who might be interested in learning English. Thank you very much for your attentive listening, my friends. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.